Hi, I'm David Barr Kirtley, host of the Geek's Guide to the Galaxy podcast. The following conversation originally appeared in episode 115 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. To learn more, visit us at geeksguideshow.com. And for our panel, we'll be discussing the new Marvel movie Guardians of the Galaxy, and this will involve spoilers, so just be aware of that. And I'm joined today by three guest geeks. So first up, we've got my longtime co-host, John Joseph Adams. He's the editor and publisher of Lightspeed and Nightmare magazines, and the series editor of Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy. He's also edited many other anthologies, including the recent books The End Is Nigh, Dead Man's Hand, and Help Fund My Robot Army. So John, welcome back.
Greetings, mortals.
Then next up, we've got Matt London, making his 11th appearance on the show. He's the author of The Eighth Continent, an eco-adventure sci-fi novel which comes out on September 16th. He's also the creator of the web series Space Pirates in Space, and his short fiction appears in The Living Dead 2, Daily Science Fiction, and Space and Time. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
And also joining us today is author and film producer Rob Bland, who you may remember from our panel on Batman back in episode 66. He's a two-time Cine Eagle Award winner for the short films On Time and Writer's Block, and is currently executive producing a feature-length independent film, 79 Parts, directed by Ari Taub. Rob is also a graduate of the Odyssey Writers Workshop and is currently working on an urban fantasy novel titled Divinity Bind. So Rob, welcome to the show.
Hello, my subjects.
All right, and so the first thing I want to talk about is just, what were the circumstances under which you saw this movie? Did you see it in 3D, stuff like that, overall feelings? And so, John, you were just telling me that you saw this movie in 4D, so why don't you start off and tell us about that?
Yeah, so apparently, the United States' only 4D theater is in LA, and I guess there's only a couple of other ones throughout the world. I think they were pioneered in Korea, but so 4D, obviously, you have to put it in quotes, but I mean, it's a 3D screen, but then the theater does some other stuff. So, like, for instance, the seats move around and stuff. So kind of like if you've done Star Tours or something like that, where it's like sort of like a virtual roller coaster type of thing. It kind of feels like that, except that the seat's moving instead of the whole theater. So it sort of does that, like when spaceships are banking around, in fight scenes and all that kind of thing. And also, like, it sort of sprays, some mist on you occasionally, and there's some smells and stuff, and actually, in Guardians of the Galaxy, when Groot does his little trick with the lights, with the little sort of firefly thingies, when they're in the dark, they actually had a bunch of bubbles fall from the ceiling to sort of help try to enhance the effect.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow, so wait, what sort of smells did they have?
They basically had one smell. I think they could use a little bit more work in that department. I don't know what the smell is or what it's supposed to be. It kind of was like, I think it was basically like, like laser gun. It was supposed to be like sort of laser gun smell. So like, it was sort of like a sort of burnt kind of like electronic sort of odor. I don't know what the heck it was, but it was awful. Not like you're gagging or anything, but it wasn't a good smell. And I think they could definitely come up with some additional smells to sort of vary it up a bit. I mean, I was joking before I went to it. I was like, I'm not sure that I want to smell Rocket Raccoon because he doesn't seem like he would smell very good. But so luckily we didn't have to. But the smells that they did provide us with weren't the best.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say I saw this in a real IMAX screen in Manhattan in 3D, and
Yay.
For complicated reasons, I ended up having to go to the 9 a.m. show, which was really nice because there were only about 20 people in the theater, so I didn't have to sit next to anyone else. Nobody distracted me or anything. And it's a gorgeous movie in IMAX, but I didn't know that the 3D added a lot to it, honestly. What did you guys think, Rob and Matt? What kind of shows did you see?
I saw it opening night, I guess, the Friday that it came out with my wife and friend, and we had a good time. It was a big IMAX screening with 3D. I wear glasses, and it's always annoying to have to go to a 3D movie with my glasses on, because I end up getting this sort of like weird distortion effect between the two sets of lenses, which can kind of, I don't know, distract from the movie experience. I don't know if other glasses wearing people have experienced this phenomenon, but they should stage a protest. But it was, it was fun. Yeah.
How about Rob? What was your experience like?
Well, I am actively avoiding the 3D experience. It's just has not. It's been more of a distraction for me, and considering how much extra you pay for the so-called experience, I just don't feel that it's a very good value. And so I just try to find the largest 2D screen with the most, sophisticated sound system. So in my local theater, they do have IMAX 3D, but it's faux IMAX. It's not real IMAX at all, which is another discussion. So I just went to the larger screen format that they call RPX, which is really what they're trying to market is their sound system with RPX. It's a Regal Cinema thing. So I saw it on 2D, a slightly larger screen, and a ridiculously loud sound system.
I mean, I actually avoid 3D when I can, but there are no non-3D IMAX prints of this movie, I think. So if you want to see IMAX, you have to go 3D. But nevertheless, I absolutely love this movie. I laughed out loud through the whole thing. I cried pretty much for a lot of it. What do you? I think I heard all you guys. Actually, I don't think I've heard what Matt thought. Did you like this movie, Matt?
Oh, a twist. It was fine. I'm sort of getting to a point where I feel like this is the new standard, and so people are accepting pretty generic plots and pretty stock characters as like because so many movies are bad, something that's passable on all each box got checked, and so it was fine. And it's better than a lot of movies that I've seen lately, but it didn't floor me or anything like that.
Wow, I'm surprised to hear you say that. I mean, I just had so much fun watching it that just sort of made it so much better as an experience in my mind than so many other movies that I've seen in theaters, which may have better plots, may have better acting and writing and whatnot, but yeah, I mean, I just and I didn't know anything about the Guardians of the Galaxy actually. The title I guess was sort of on hiatus during the time when I was mostly reading comics, and then the movie itself is actually based on a sort of reboot of it, which started in 2008, which I was not familiar with. So I didn't have any attachment to them, although I did know Gamora and Drax, and Thanos, of course, from comics because they had been in other comics, but I went into it without really having any attachments, but I loved it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll tell. Here are some of the things that I really liked about it. I really dug the opening sequence where it felt like Star Wars and Indiana Jones at the same time. I thought that was really cool. There were some really great stylistic things in it, and
Wait, Matt, when you say the opening sequence, you don't mean when his mom's dying of cancer?
I'm sorry. No. Yeah. I guess is it the opening credits is when he's sort of making his approach into this sort of like cavern or tomb or whatever that has his MacGuffin in it. Yeah, no, the sob story prologue I could have probably done without.
Oh no way, that was great.
Okay, well I did like seeing what's his name, Greg Henry. That's cool. I mean, that was one of the another thing that I really liked about it is that as a director, James Gunn kind of has his troupe of actors. And it was nice to see a lot of them, like Greg Henry, Michael Rooker.
Was that the grandfather?
Yeah, the grandfather. And then Michael Rooker, who played Yondu. And it was nice to see his sort of troupe show up in a huge budget Marvel movie. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, so that was a really great sequence. I really liked seeing just like a straight up space opera movie. I hadn't seen a movie like that in a long, long time. That wasn't, cribbed from some old serial like, Star Trek, right? So it was nice it was really nice to kind of get that experience. Like I said, there were a lot of things that I really liked about it, and it was funny. I laughed the whole way through too. But, so let's talk about all the awesome things about it, and then, I'll kind of give my whole...
I actually have a question for you, Matt. Is it a movie that you'd like to see again?
I wouldn't pay to see the movie again, but if it's if it's on DVD and people want to put it on while we're doing something else, I would totally sit through it again.
What was it? What was it about the prologue, the opening, the very very opening sequence, the prologue that you found ineffective or distracting or annoying?
I don't know if I would say any of those things about it. If I did already, I'll take it back. But yeah, it didn't, like, it's nice. Okay, it's nice. It's not nice, but it's like, okay, this is our attempt to humanize this character who we're going to meet in a little bit. Kids are likable. Orphans are sympathetic. That's fine. But again, it's all going back to like hitting those same beats and pushing those same buttons to create, a really derivative narrative.
That's interesting because I thought that the opening sequence, the mother death scene, was really more about establishing the deeper meaning of the use of the pop music references throughout the film. I thought yes, you did have your generic sort of death scene opening sequence movie, but this movie sort of revels in the fact that it has generic tropes and generic archetypes and sort of has fun with it.
Yeah, and I don't think when I saw the trailer for this movie, I would have necessarily expected it was going to open with a mom dying in a hospital room of cancer, right?
Right.
And John, I thought it was interesting how much you liked this movie, considering that you were really lukewarm on the trailer.
Yeah.
Was it a lot different than you were expecting from the trailer?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it took me a while to warm up to what they were doing with the trailer. And mostly what I didn't like about the trailer was the Uka Chaka, song, like sort of, it's like, I don't know. There was something about that just seemed like almost too ridiculous to me. But, in retrospect, having seen the movie, the trailer was kind of perfect. It's just like, to me, it was mostly a reaction to that. I really love the way, they sort of teased the movie without showing us all of the cool stuff in it. It's like they did a good job of like introducing us to all these characters, which I think was important because nobody knows who they are. Because like we were saying, this is not one of the major Marvel properties that like Captain America or the Avengers, where people will be like, oh yeah, I know those guys. Nobody knows who the Guardians of the Galaxy are. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that's very true. I had no intention of seeing this movie at all. When I heard that Marvel was coming out with the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I was just like, so what? And
wait, so Rob, did you know that? Had you ever read Guardians of the Galaxy?
Never even heard of him. Even heard of him. And I was like, wow. So they must be desperate pulling from like old inventory, stuff. And I had really my reaction was really actually initially just cynical. I just figured that, look, Disney just acquired, Marvel, and Marvel had already made a lot of distribution deals with other studios. And so Disney was trying to pull, deep into inventory so they could actually, not have to share any of the profits with the other studios that Marvel had made previous deals with. So that was sort of my cynical response. And I didn't get interested until I actually saw the trailer. When I saw the trailer and I saw Groot, who was framed where his head was missing, and he sort of like peeks below the frame to take a look, to so that you could see his face. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. I don't know. The humor sort of resonated with me, and I was like, oh, okay. I actually might want to see this one. This might actually be fun. Whereas my girlfriend, when she saw the trailer, she was like, oh, great, a talking raccoon. Gee, just exactly what I want to see, So it was funny how people responded, to the trailer. I responded positively because my expectations were just, I had no intention of seeing the movie at all.
Yeah, I responded positively to the trailer as well. Although then when watching the movie, I found it really disconcerting because the movie didn't match the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
In what sense?
Well, Drax wasn't in the lineup in the actual movie.
Right.
And then even if you go back and watch the trailer, I don't think the scene where they catch him trying to grab the orb, it doesn't look the same at all to me from what I remember from the movie.
Yeah, some of the trailer is definitely different. Like I think they put Drax in the lineup in the trailer because they were trying to introduce the team to people because nobody knows who they are. And I thought that was fine. And like, yeah, some of the other sequences are a little bit off. Like where that one guy says, "What a bunch of a-holes" or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's different in the trailer than how you actually see it in the movie. But I was gonna say actually, sort of what Rob was saying about what your thoughts about Marvel making this movie were. Like, I kind of almost had like the opposite sort of view, like not that cynical, like, oh, they were dredging up something, from the vault to just throw out there. I was thinking it more like they were like, you know what? We're Marvel. We can do whatever the fuck we want. We're gonna take this crazy ass galactic, team of misfits that nobody knows who they are. We're gonna make a big movie out of it, and people are gonna go see it. And then it's like throwing the gauntlet down to DC, be like, what up?
Yeah, can you make a talking raccoon into a hit movie?
Yeah.
Well, Matt, like, what do you have? You said you did some research on this. Can you give us some perspective here?
You mean as it relates to the Marvel universe as a whole?
Like, how did this movie get made? Do you have any idea?
Yeah. So I think so. I don't know for sure, but I suspect that this is part of a large Marvel strategy to tell the Infinity Gauntlet saga, which is a huge classic Marvel tale, which spans a bunch of, limited issue trades with crossovers with all of the major heroes. And, a lot of it takes place in this sort of like the Marvel's galactic, world, right? Which involves Silver Surfer and Galactus, the Celestials, all of these weird cosmic beings. And then it also, but then it's connected to the Fantastic Four because of the End Zone and all of their sort of Doctor Strange oriented plot lines, which then through the Fantastic Four connects to Spider-Man, and then the other end of it through Thor connects to all the Avengers. So it's a way that it's the sort of Thanos saga is a way to connect every single property in the Marvel canon.
Okay, wait, for people who don't read comics that much, could you just give us like the short synopsis of the Infinity Gauntlet?
Oh, wait. Can I please? The Infinity Gauntlet is my jam.
Okay, go. Like, take it away, John.
Okay. So, and I actually reread the entire Infinity Gauntlet, it's 6 issues, but I read it in preparation for this panel. Okay, so basically, the Infinity Gems, or as they're called in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Infinity Stones, they're these 6, stones that have these, almost magical abilities. So there's the Soul Gem and the Power Gem and all these things, and they all, do these, they give the person, these sort of, godlike powers. And so Thanos goes about and he collects them all, and he, puts them into this gauntlet, and then, once he has them all, he's basically omnipotent. And so Thanos is doing all of this because he's courting death. And when I say death, I mean the actual personification of death, like the character Death in the Marvel Universe. She's sort of like the goddess of death or whatever. And so he's sort of courting her, and to try to impress her, he decides he's going to exterminate half of the sentient life in the universe.
Wait a second. He's got a crush on Death.
Yeah.
This is why he wants to kill all these sentient beings.
Right. And because Death actually communicates that there's an imbalance in the universe, that there's too many people basically, and that too many of them are on the living side of the divide,
Oh,
and
I
so
see.
and so Thanos, in order to please her, he decides he's going to exterminate half the life in the galaxy, or the universe. And so he to do this, he goes and assembles the Infinity Gauntlet. And so actually, if anybody wants to get some research on the Infinity Gauntlet and the Infinity Stones and all that, so there's a Silver Surfer graphic novel called the Rebirth of Thanos, and that sort of sets the stage. And then there's a 2-issue miniseries called Thanos Quest. And you can get all this on Marvel Unlimited through the digital app if you haven't, gotten them already, but, in paper. And then Thanos Quest, that shows him actually going and getting all the individual Infinity Gems. And then there's the Infinity Gauntlet miniseries itself. And which, shows, the entire, struggle, against Thanos. But the kind of crazy thing is that, so all of that's available to read, but as Matt was saying, the Infinity Gauntlet's this big Marvel spanning crossover event. So like there were like when I was reading it as they were coming out at the time back in the day, all of these comics had crossovers and they were branded like, Infinity Gauntlet crossover. So, but none of those were collected. So, like, if you just read the 6 issues, you're kind of missing a bunch of the story. So that's a little frustrating for me that you can't actually go and revisit that easily. But there is all that. And if you want to get a background on the Infinity stuff, that's a good place to start. And the Infinity Gauntlet is, like I said, it's my jam.
Well, and like as you guys are alluding to, I mean, there's a ton of backstory behind this movie. And connections to other things. Do you think that it's going to get confusing for people with no prior familiarity for this? I mean, I thought it was really interesting in this movie how they just throw you into the Xandar and the Scree, which I was not really familiar with, and they don't. It's not like it's not idiot proof. You really have to be paying attention to follow all this stuff in this movie.
That was one of the things that I really liked about it, actually,
Yeah.
is that they were just like, here's the thing they're all chasing. Here are the two alien forces at war. Who cares? It doesn't matter what the intricacies of the plot are. It's like that was one of the things that I think, for example, the Star Wars prequels did really poorly, which was throw you into this like bureaucratic conflict and then explaining everyone's motivations in it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care. It's like, look, there are the people that are in metal boxes with bad lighting, and then there are people that are living in Dragon Ball Z village on this planet, and they're at war. Okay, that's it. That's all you need to know to sort of get a handle on the plot, because it doesn't really matter, what the forces are at work here. What matters is this small group of characters and how they all interact with one another.
Yeah, actually, I totally love that as well, that they just threw you right in there, because I'm so sick of these big sci-fi movies starting with this really, basically a montage of like news or whatever. Like, Edge of Tomorrow I thought was great, but it starts with that same kind of thing where it's like, hey, here's a bunch of exposition right at the start of the movie to like set the stage. It's like, you know what, guys, we can figure it out. It's like none of that stuff is really important in most of these cases. And it's like just movie after movie, they do that. And it's just like, you could just cut like the first 5 or 10 minutes of almost every science fiction movie that's made, because they just do all that. And I really appreciate just being thrown into it like that, because yeah, it's like, most of this stuff doesn't matter that much, and you'll pick up what you need to pick up.
Yeah, and I think we're at a point where audiences are familiar enough with all this stuff, the basic ideas of science fiction, because we've seen all these other movies before. I've heard a lot of people comparing this movie to Star Wars or to the Star Trek reboot. I got a strong Fifth Element vibe from, both the movie and the trailer. How about Rob? Where do you think this movie kind of fits in terms of science fiction movies we've seen before?
Did you just say The Fifth Element?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it. I didn't like The Fifth Element at all. It didn't work for me at all. So I mean, I think it's 10 times better than The Fifth Element. But,
well, it's like the humor in the fifth. I mean, actually, I didn't like The Fifth Element the first time I saw it, and then the more I watched it, the more I liked it. But the humor in that is like way out in left field, and this is kind of like third base or something, right? I mean, it's like it's sort of in that direction, but it's taking it nowhere near as far.
Yeah.
Like, is this the new... I've heard a lot of people say this is the new Star Wars for a new generation. What do you think about that?
Well, if it is, I think it's a damn good start.
Yeah, actually, it's really interesting because I don't know if you guys saw that somebody did like a YouTube fan trailer of mashing up Star Wars with the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer, sort of like the vibe of it. So like they took all these scenes from Star Wars and they played like the music from Guardians of the Galaxy trailer, and they introduced the characters in Star Wars the same way that they were introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy. And it was like perfect. It was like really fun. And it's like, and so it really helped sort of contrast the two franchises and be like, okay, well, there's a lot of similarities obviously, but Guardians of the Galaxy does what Star Wars did, but like is like just super fun and doesn't take itself so seriously.
Yeah, well, that's what Star Wars, the original, what was it, 1977? The original Star Wars? The original Star Wars, if you rewatch it, it doesn't take itself that seriously. So in that vein, yes, I mean, they're a perfect match for one another.
I think one thing that's really interesting is if you take the original Star Wars movies and then go to the prequels, it's kind of like they took Star Wars and made everyone into a Jedi and politician, which doesn't work.
Right.
And Guardians of the Galaxy is like they took the original Star Wars movies and made everyone into Han Solo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. No, there's Who's the most whiny character in Guardians of the Galaxy? If you had to say there was a whiny character, who would you pin it on?
I mean, probably the main character, Peter Quill, I would say, or maybe Drax.
Maybe Rocket.
Yeah, I think Rocket.
Yeah, I think Rocket.
But even then, it's everyone's silence is a sign that there is just no whiny, annoying character in the movie. Right. That's a thing in its favor.
Right, because when you rewatch Star Wars, the whiny character is obviously Luke. I mean, it's like he sticks out like a sore thumb in terms of how whiny he is. But Rocket, a talking raccoon, who I would pin as the closest to a whiny character. I actually loved Rocket, and I loved the way he whined because he was irreverent. He was the most irreverent character there. I mean, here you have Peter Quill saying, look, we got to stop these guys. This guy's going to destroy the galaxy. And Rocket's like, oh, what does the galaxy owe you? Who cares?
I thought Rocket totally stole the show, which I think is really a feat for a CGI character, which I ordinarily can't stand.
Right. Well, I think Groot was completely CGI too, and he stole my heart. When he died, quote unquote, died at the end, I was moved. I was a tear ran down my cheek.
Multiple tears over here.
Yeah.
What a great character, and I don't, like I said, I don't really know that character, but like I did a little bit of research, and it seems like he actually could speak regularly, at least in other comics. Like at least I saw one cover of a comic where he was saying, a whole sentence. So it's like maybe he's not true to that original character, but like I don't care. Like I love this Groot. Like this Groot was amazing.
Yeah, it was great. He was great.
I read that Vin Diesel was actually he sat down with James Gunn, and he actually had James Gunn tell him what each I am Groot is supposed to mean, so that he could try to say it in a way that would convey the sort of nuance of what Groot is actually trying to say.
Right.
Oh, and actually there's another comparison to Star Wars where Rocket seems to sort of understand what Groot is saying, even though he's just saying nonsense, whereas like, Han Solo knows what Chewbacca's saying, even though he's just growling.
Right.
So it's kind of like that.
And Rocket too, like when you see he has all these sort of implants in his back, and he talks about how he doesn't want people to think of him as this monster. I mean, I love that little raccoon, I mean, it wasn't just that he was funny. I actually liked him too.
Yeah. No, you did end up creating sympathy for him. But I found his irreverence refreshing. And his smart aleckiness,
Like the part where he's like, all right, we're all standing up now, like a bunch of jackasses.
Just like jackasses. Yeah. I love that.
Dave, I really liked your question about where the movie fits in, because the comparison that I kept drawing it to, actually, as I was watching, was to The Princess Bride, which I think is a really good comparison, because it's a bunch of heroes that hate each other, that start as enemies, that have to sort of band together to take on a more powerful evil.
Yeah, well, and like Drax is kind of like Inigo Montoya, and Groot is kind of like Andre the Giant.
They all start out trying to, kidnap each other and fight each other and betray each other, but they're brought together. And so, but I don't know. I felt like there wasn't enough of the movie dedicated to that part of the story. That was one of the things that I found disappointing, was that the characters seemed to be interacting in a more interesting way before they all teamed up and formed.
I agree that for a bunch of space pirates, they formed a team pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly, yeah.
Yeah, well, an Infinity Stone will do that.
Yeah, so actually, can I bring up something else about the Infinity Gauntlet?
Yeah, go.
About the future of where this might be going? Because like Matt was saying, I also discovered that Kevin Feige apparently has either said flat out or insinuated that the plot of Avengers 3 will be revolving around the Infinity Gauntlet. And I was just like, my mind was like blown. I was like, I mean, even though I've seen Thanos, I saw Thanos in the glimpse, and they did the scene after the credits in whatever movie that was. You saw Thanos for a minute, and then Thanos is in this. I'm like, I never thought I would see Thanos in a movie at all. I mean, honestly. But, even with all that, I didn't really think they would actually do the Infinity Gauntlet. And so just the thought of that is like kind of crazy. Well, and so I was like looking into it some more, and like I know I had heard people talking about the Infinity Gauntlet in Odin's treasure room in Thor. And so actually, yeah, like you can actually see the Infinity Gauntlet in there. So I'm a little confused how that's going to work, but I'm super excited about that. But so one other background thing though is like, so the Tesseract is actually called the Cosmic Cube in the comics, and that was what Thanos used the first time to try to, get ultimate power. And so like he's done this several times. And the thing is, it's like one of the things I think really makes him a compelling villain is that it's like he almost has this sense that he doesn't deserve it, and so he sets up his own demise. And because the thing is he's grabbing ultimate power in most of these cases, and so like it almost has to do that in order to give the heroes any chance to defeat him.
Is anyone else concerned about how these different franchises are going to mesh? Because the tone of this movie just seems so different to me than the tone of Captain America Winter Soldier. It just, like, I can't imagine Rocket Raccoon showing up in Winter Soldier, and so I'm just a little bit concerned about when all these characters start coming together, it's going to work.
I think the visual tone and the narrative tone fits pretty well with the Avengers. I agree that it doesn't fit well with Captain America or the single franchise, but when they combine them with the Avengers, I don't see much of a disconnect there.
Well, it's interesting because that's one of the things that Marvel has done in the comics for a long time is meshed these weird, wacky things with their normal serious stuff, like even in the Infinity Gauntlet and with that in that Silver Surfer graphic novel I mentioned, one of the comics in that collection is basically has the Silver Surfer interacting with this guy called the Impossible Man, who's just like a completely ridiculous character. And I mean, I kind of wish that wasn't in there, to be honest. But I mean, they have done stuff like that numerous times in the comics, and it usually works. And I mean, like, somebody like Thanos, who's super serious and dark, and like, trying to take over the universe all the time. He's had lots of interactions with characters that are sort of silly and everything. So it's there's even a Christmas story. There's a Christmas story with Thanos in this graphic novel. So who's to say if it's going to work in the movies?
Is it worthy to make a movie out of this Christmas story?
No. It's not even really worth reading it. You can skip that one.
No, but I mean, I think Captain America, whose movies I think are very different than the Avengers per se. The tone is very different. I think Captain America fit very well in the Avengers movie. I mean, Dave, didn't you think Captain America fit well in the Avengers movie itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's more the Rocket Raccoon Captain America crossover I have concerns about.
I see. Yeah, I don't know. I have an easier time thinking of them blending together if it's an Avengers movie. If Guardians were to suddenly poke in on a Captain America universe story, a sole Captain America story, I have a hard time seeing that. But as long as it's the Avengers with the tone that Joss Whedon established, the visual tone, the narrative tone that he established with the Avengers movie itself, I don't have trouble seeing them blend.
So wait, John. So in the comics, if there's all this stuff going on in outer space, does like Iron Man know about that? And could Peter Quill just fly to Earth and pick up more songs and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you mean like during the Infinity Gauntlet, or
like in this Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah.
Could Peter Quill just get in his ship and fly to Earth?
Right.
And it would be present time, right? And could he just buy could he just get an iPod and could just get all the classic songs he wants?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, why doesn't he do that? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he totally should be able to.
I actually think that Iron Man joins the Guardians of the Galaxy in an upcoming or recent comic for Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's like it might be them seeding plot lines for future movies. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's like, even though this feels like a futuristic movie, Marvel stuff has never actually been futuristic generally. Like, the main Marvel universe, like, they've had all this crazy space stuff, like Silver Surfer and all this stuff that takes place out in space. I mean, it's always just contemporary. It's just that, like, everything else is, like, more super advanced than Earth is. So, yeah, I mean, theoretically, Quill should be able to just go to Earth and get more songs, but maybe he's got a bounty on him or something, and he can't risk going to Earth, or I don't know. Who knows?
Well, I think cassette tapes are, obsolete, and Sony Walkman is obsolete, and he wants to keep his Sony Walkman and his cassettes. So
No, I mean, he has strong sentimental reasons for wanting to hang on to that Walkman. I was just wondering if he just wanted more songs, if he could just go to Earth and get them.
I bet he could, but I think he probably wouldn't want to, because he wants to just trust what his mom gave him,
Absolutely.
And especially now that he has Volume 2.
Peter Quill is not a sellout. He's not going to get an iPod.
Yeah, so somebody was saying, well, how did he keep getting new batteries for that thing? And I said, well, I assume that he invented somebody figured out some futuristic way, or some fancy technology way of powering the Walkman without without actual AA batteries. But the bigger question is, how is he gonna, if the tape unspools, how is he gonna get it back into the case without a pencil?
Well, I mean, he apparently hooked up his stereo to the spaceship.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's apparently got pretty good mechanical technical skills.
Yeah, he's handy.
I mean, Rocket is the gadget master. So if anyone can solve that problem, it's Rocket.
Although Quill had already solved it by the time he even met Rocket. It seems
That's true.
So,
That's
they both got those skills.
Yeah, the mad skills, mad gadget.
Yeah, mad skills.
Yeah.
See, John, you saw this movie twice, right? Was it different at all the second time?
I don't think it was different. I enjoyed it just as much, I think. I saw it in the RPX 3D the second time around, and then basically, like, I wasn't desperate to see it again, but I went and saw it with my wife the first time, and then my sister-in-law who lives with us, she hadn't seen it yet, so she didn't have to go by herself. I went to see it with her the second time, but I mean, I was very happy to see it again. I mean, it's I think I enjoyed it the second time maybe a little bit more, because actually my one knock against the 4D theater was that I wish I had taken some Dramamine before I went to it, because just all of the movement and stuff, I wasn't really quite prepared for it. And I felt a little nauseous, part of the way through the movie. So I enjoyed it a little bit more the second time around because of that, because of the lack of that. But yeah.
Did you notice anything the second time that you hadn't noticed the first time?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I was watching scenes like the collector scene a little bit more closely to see if I could see anything else in the background, but I didn't really pick up anything, just because I was so lost in the movie,
I heard somebody say that, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard someone say that you can see a little bit of Howard the Duck in one of those collector shots in the background if you know where to look.
Oh no, that's crazy. I mean, obviously he's in the tag after the credits, but I didn't notice him.
Yeah,
what did you guys think of that?
I didn't. I thought it was terrible.
Yeah. I hope that was just a silly joke that they threw in there, and they're not actually planning on bringing that back.
Disney owns everything now, so they got it.
I'm sorry, because if the Infinity Stone is with Howard the Duck, I just can't deal. I'm sorry, I just can't deal.
Is there just anything small details you guys noticed in the movie that you think people... Actually, it was kind of funny because there are a lot of sort of 70s and 80s references in this movie. So and in that credit scene that Matt was talking about at the very beginning, where he's walking through the Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of thing, there's a part where he slides across this sort of slime puddle, and someone mentioned that that's the slide that Tom Cruise does in Risky Business.
Oh.
Right.
Oh, right.
And also his spaceship is called the Milano. I don't know if you guys caught that. So
no.
It's Alyssa Milano.
That's funny. I love that opening sequence though that you guys were just talking about, where he's walking on the planet and he grabs that lizard and he starts singing into it and stuff. It's
yeah, that was hilarious.
Although someone was pointing out that, I mean, in the very first scene when he's a little kid, he says how he got into a fight protecting a little frog. And then...
Oh, yeah, right. And then he's kicking...
And then the very next scene, he's just casually kicking small lizard things out of his way.
Well, aren't they flesh-eating lizards that are trying to eat him? They look...
Yeah, they are. That's a fair point, yeah.
Self-defense frog kicking.
He seems to be kind of enjoying it, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's using one as a microphone, so it's...
Yeah.
Well, he grew up and he became a little bit of a dick, So.
Yeah, he was raised by space pirates.
Yeah.
Actually, he was raised by Michael Rooker. I mean, what do you...
I know, exactly.
I was going to say, actually, when Matt was sort of complaining about the sort of generic nature of the actual opening sequence with the mother and everything, I was thinking how it kind of subverted the whole thing, because it's like, okay, so you have a character who just loses his mother to cancer, but then he gets abducted by aliens, so it's like the end of that sequence, like, kind of subverts the expectation of, like, what that movie would have been, like, right at the start, because it's like, okay, so first of all, we didn't expect it to start with that in the first place, but then once we're into the scene, and then it ends, and it's like he just walks outside and gets abducted by aliens. It's like you didn't really expect that to happen. So
yeah, that felt
that was
extremely
cool.
arbitrary to me, and I didn't like it at first. And of course, until it was explained at the end, then I was like, oh,
Yeah. No, I actually liked the way it was kind of arbitrary and out of nowhere. But then when they explained it, I thought that was cool too, though. So.
Well, let's say, what do you mean by it was explained at the end?
Oh, well, because, they start talking and it's like, his dad had sent them to go pick him up or whatever. So.
Right. And they decided not to give him to his dad. They decided to keep him. Yeah.
So who do you think his dad is?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I think.
Do you think you know? I don't know. I don't have any actual knowledge, and I don't have any guesses.
I think
go for it.
I think it's Adam Warlock. That's my theory.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be weird.
Well, wait, Matt, you want to explain that?
Sure. So, well, for one thing, Adam Warlock is a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy in the comic. He plays a very important role in the Infinity Saga.
Yeah.
And at the very beginning, the mother, as she's dying, is describing the father to young Peter and says he was a being of pure light. So it has to be some sort of important cosmic entity. My guess. That's my guess.
Right.
But it could be, one of the Celestials or, some other being of great importance. Although I can't imagine that a Celestial would employ Michael Rooker to go fetch his progeny.
Yeah, I can't actually picture Adam Warlock doing that either. And that's an interesting idea. But he also he's never seemed to be like a sexual being whatsoever. Like he's so I would find it really hard to imagine him actually having a relationship with a human character. But it's an interesting idea though.
Okay, well, Matt, wait, one theory I heard. Okay, I got to credit this to Adam Murdo of the Comic Geek Speak podcast. But he was saying that obviously, so it appears that some sort of alien came down and romanced Quill's mother. And who would do that? And apparently in the comics, Thanos has a brother named Eros, who's some sort of erotic god or love god. And that would kind of fit, right, with him doing that. And then Quill seems to have this kind of, he's sort of a ladies' man. So maybe he gets a little bit of that from his father.
Yeah. It could also be Captain Marvel. Because he's a Kree, right? He's part of that whole kind of cosmic Marvel storyline.
Yeah. That also seems a little out of character just because he's so, noble and shit.
Yeah.
But, yeah. That Eros is an interesting idea. I mean, describing him as a being of pure light seems a little weird, because, it kind of seems like she's saying that, metaphorically, but of course, she probably meant it actually literally. So, if she actually meant it literally, Eros doesn't have anything like that, going for him. So, but yeah, anyway, I mean, I don't know. It's, who knows? I'd actually rather not actually find out until they reveal it in the movie or something, but, yeah, so I haven't tried to figure out who it is, but I expect we probably could.
His father's probably Tony Stark.
Probably.
I guess we should mention that he actually, in the comics, he does have a father, but it's not. It seems like they're probably going to do something different in the movie because it's not that interesting. The way it's set up in the movie, if it's revealed to be the person it is in the comics, it's just not that interesting.
Okay, so speaking of Michael Rooker, though, and Yondu, he's probably my least favorite part of the movie, actually. So, I personally, I could have used with, 100% less, use of the word boy in dialogue, because Michael Rooker says boy, 1,000 times in the movie. He's calling everybody boy, and, punctuating every sentence with boy. Thanos even calls Ronan boy at some point, and I was like, no, Thanos, Thanos...
Actually, Thanos says boy twice.
So he said it twice? Okay,
he says
Thanos
it twice, John. Twice.
Thanos should not be using that to call anybody boy, okay? But Michael Rooker, I just, like, I get it that they did that on purpose, but I'm like, don't just take Merle from Walking Dead and put him in blue makeup and have him be the same character.
Oh, but
he's the same character.
He's the same character in everything he does.
I know. Well, don't hire him to be an alien then. You know, like I didn't. That didn't work for me at all. Like,
you don't like hillbilly aliens, John.
I mean, I guess it's possible. Some case that might work. It didn't work for me for that. He was by far my least favorite part of the movie.
I thought his arrow was cool though.
Yeah, his arrow was pretty cool.
His arrow was very cool.
Yeah, but I mean, his character was my only like real point of annoyance. I think there are other flaws to it. Like, if you guys want to launch into that, we could do that. But I mean, like, Michael Rooker in particular, just I really didn't like his character. I didn't like him being cast in that role. I would have much rather they just had somebody who wasn't, being Michael Rooker in that role. So.
All right, well, yeah. So why don't we get into like complaints people had about the movie? I mean, my main ones are just that. I mean, Matt already mentioned that the story of an evil leader trying to get his hands on a powerful artifact that allowed him to destroy the world is just kind of done to death, right? I had no problem with it, but I would have liked to see something maybe more original.
But what do you expect an evil, leader to do? I mean, that's part of the definition of evil, isn't it?
No, but I'm saying, okay, Rob, wait, bear with me for a second.
Okay.
You could have a movie without an evil leader. Right. They could be doing something, they could just be like just trying to start a restaurant or something. I don't know.
But there's obviously a larger frame story, right? Which is the stones, right? The Infinity Stones, where I think there are 3 or 4 that we know of, right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know where they are, but there's a larger frame story here, and obviously you've got not just one MacGuffin, but 6 of them at least. And so they're all powerful. So, I mean, they're kind of tied to that trope.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hear what you're saying though, Dave. Like, I mean, and I appreciate what Rob's saying as well. Like, I think the Infinity Stones does kind of mitigate that a little bit. But that said, like, Ronan wasn't my favorite. Like, he wasn't as strong as he could be. Especially with Thanos there in the background. It's like, oh god, Thanos, he's an amazing villain. And I hope they don't screw up Thanos, like, whenever they actually give him some real screen time. But,
I thought he looked great. I mean, that was one thing that I really liked, is that just the look of Thanos was spot on. They do so many things to like modernize or update, stuff in the Marvel movies. And it always bums me out because I'm just like, ugh, why does it, like Galactus is not a cloud, right? And like all the X-Men uniforms look like dominatrix clothes.
Oh,
and it's like
horrible,
right? And so it was really nice to be like, you look like you jumped off the page of a comic book that I own.
That was awesome.
Like, that was very
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. I thought they did a really good job with his voice too, because it's like because like in the comics, obviously his words are written in a sort of weird way, so it's to convey some sort of like otherworldly voice, and so it was cool to actually hear it translated to screen. But as far as other things we didn't like goes, I could have done without Peter Quill being that sort of womanizer type character. Like Dave, you mentioned in the show notes that you sent us, you mentioned that he's portrayed as not knowing the name of the woman that's on his ship with him and everything, and it's like I actually kind of like that scene. I just wish that he didn't like not know her name. Like if he had knew her name and he just had forgotten that she was still there, that would have been funny, and that would have been just as funny without him also being kind of an asshole who slept with some alien he picked up that he doesn't even know her name. So I didn't like that. And there's a couple other things like that in the movie that I could have done without, like Drax calls Gamora a whore at some point for like no reason. And
that's after he insults everyone else, though. I mean, he's in the process of being generous to them, right? I mean, in his mind, he's being generous, but he's being insulting to them at the same time. And he was just
right. It
was after he called Groot a dumb tree, right?
Right. Well, that's really different though. Like, I think if you're gonna, I mean, it's just like, it's because there's like a pattern of just like misogyny throughout most movies, especially action movies, and so it just kind of brings it to the forefront as like, okay, well, like, look, did he have to make a gendered insult to her, and one as nasty as that? Like, I mean, that's like one of the worst things you can call a woman. So, it's just like, it kind of stuck out to me as like, oh, okay, well, that was, kind of upsetting for no reason. And I expect a lot of people were actually really pissed off by that. So, it seems like
I don't know. It just seemed consistent with Drax's character. I don't know. I mean,
all right.
It did bother me that Peter Quill didn't know who that woman was, couldn't remember her name. I thought that bothered me. That bothered me. But Drax, calling Gamora a whore did not bother me because I thought that's exactly what he would do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit more with John on this one because I mean, just everything Drax said made me laugh out loud. You know, where he's like, "Nothing would go over my head. My reflexes are too fast. Catch it."
That was hilarious.
And like that was the one part. That was the one line he had where I was kind of like, "Oh, I don't know how I feel about that."
Yeah. Actually, so one joke that I thought they missed an opportunity for could have been like a little wink to the comics. So like if I don't know if you guys have actually seen what Drax looks like in the comics, he's like kind of like what he looks like in the movie, but he actually wears like this like big purple cape. And I actually, and it's like, yeah, he wears this big purple cape, and it has like the frill around the, not a frill, but like it has like the back piece that sort of sticks up, sort of like Dracula's, I don't know what you call that on a cape, but so he has that in the comics, and there's this one part where they're all gearing up, and they're all like Rocket's getting his weapons and everything, and Drax is putting his knives in his boots and everything. I thought it would be funny like if he had found like a cape somewhere and like he came out with it and like presented it and or at least like and so like the others could have made fun of him, or like he could have like thought about putting it on and then just like threw it down and like said nah, whatever. I thought that would have been kind of a funny wink to the people who knew what Drax looks like in the comics.
Yeah, I don't like that idea because I mean they kind of did that in, I forget which X-Men movie it was, where he's like, what would you prefer, yellow spandex? I don't know, I hate that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's better they left it out.
I'll tell you something for me is I am completely done with prison breaks in sci-fi movies. This was one of the big things for me that really kind of bothered me about the movie. Is it's just like we just a couple months ago there was a prison break scene in a Marvel movie, like in the new X-Men movie. It's like, is this the only thing that we can do as our second act? Like, it's so boring and like tedious. I've just seen it so many times now that there's nothing.
I loved how it was triggered. Though, I mean, they're planning it. They have no intention of leaving now. And then Groot just sort of goes, oh, yeah, okay. And just kind of walks over and grabs whatever device, whatever that was. But
yeah, they did it in the way that the characters in this movie would do it. But it's like, it's this set piece that is so overdone, going back a long, long way. And I don't know. I wish they could do something else with the beginning of Act 2 of one of these movies. And then the other thing, sorry to get all like narrative structure on people, but
we can handle it.
As soon as they find the stone, and realize that the stone is what it is, I'm like, okay, so now the bad guys are going to show up and they're going to have a huge action sequence. And 15 minutes from now, the good guys are going to get beaten down. The bad guys are going to get the stone and all hope is going to be lost. Watch. And then over the next 20 minutes, that's exactly what happened. And it's like everything is so completely predictable and by the numbers. It's like we've seen this movie before. So I don't know. Like that was the stuff for me that kind of, I found was a little lacking. Just like there's
going to be a romantic subplot with Quill and Gamora.
Oh yeah, of course there has to be, right? Why doesn't she hook up with Rocket? That would be interesting, different.
I don't know. It's funny what bothers you and what doesn't bother me. Like, yeah. I mean, I saw that coming, but I liked why it happened. In terms of the bad guys showing up and taking the stone.
Right.
Like I liked the fact that it was Drax who actually called Ronan over there.
Right. Drax, whose only superpower is to be kicked long distances. Right.
I mean, I don't know. There was something about this movie when it was towards the end, and I realized that I cared about the characters. And I was like, I don't know quite how they did that, because there's nothing pretty much but action in this movie. Okay, it's generic. It's narratively predictable. But how do they deal with all this genericness? How do they deal with all this predictable narrative, but yet we still care about the characters? How do they do that? And then I was like, well, maybe they have each character do something that only that character would do. For instance, only Drax would call Ronin, right, to exact revenge at that time, which would, of course, moves the plot forward. And, of course, makes you annoyed that the bad guys show up, right there and then when you were expecting them to. But it was the reason why they showed up or how it was exacted that I appreciated. I thought, oh, okay, that's pretty cool, And so,
and then also Groot taking that battery when they're in the prison, like only that
right.
character would do that.
Right, exactly. Only Groot would do that,
Well, I did want to ask you, Matt, because we mentioned that you did this web series, Space Pirates in Space, and Guardians of the Galaxy is kind of a space pirates movie as well. I was wondering if do you see any similarities or differences? Like, do you think they face some of the same issues you faced when you were making your Space Pirates show?
Well, there is. It's not a totally. Obviously, it's not an original idea conceived by me. The sort of ragtag band of heroes, whether they're on a pirate ship or a spaceship. It's been done a lot of times before. My inspiration when I took on Space Pirates in Space was to create a group of very disparate characters, each with their own unique set of goals and objectives, and made sure that they were always trying to one-up each other and sort of go against each other, so that they're their own worst enemies all the way through the story. I found it a little bit convenient that the heroes in Guardians of the Galaxy were so quick to abandon their original objectives and work together as a team. But they managed to pull that off, I think. There's when you're building a hero team, there are a lot of tropes that you can either use to accentuate the story that you're telling or turn away from in order to create something fresh and interesting. Like, I have my Groot. He was a giant, ooze monster. And my captain was much more of an idiot than Peter Quill is. As usual, the woman is the smartest person on the team.
Well, yeah, and also, Gamora is basically the girl on the team, right?
Right.
And can you imagine if there were if it was a 5-person team, 4 women and 1 male character? That's not something you see much.
No, it's not, and I would love to see that story. I think that would be really interesting and fresh. I'm trying to think now of if there are examples of that kind of thing, but nothing certainly is jumping out in mind.
Oh, so I thought of one other thing to criticize the movie for, which I didn't pick up on when I first watched it, but I saw people talking about it afterward, and then when I saw it again, I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Another way in which the movie is like Star Wars is that there's apparently only one black person in the galaxy. It's like there's this one guy who's like on the ship who's like, I think he's with the Nova Corps or something, and he's trying to capture them, or maybe he was one of the prison guards. I can't remember, but there's one guy who has like screen time and he actually talks to people. And then there's like tons of aliens. There's all kinds of aliens all over the place, but then basically almost all of the humans are white. And so it's like, okay, well, that's kind of, they could have done better with that, certainly. And maybe there were people in the background or something, but as far as like actual speaking roles, yeah, like all the human looking people were white. Except for that one guy.
Right. And even he was...
Hey, at least he didn't die.
Yeah.
That's true. He didn't. Yeah. Well, at least as far as we know, a lot of people died in this movie, I have to say. And so I saw people saying like, oh, well, I don't know if it's fair to characterize a movie as fun in which so many people die, but it's like, it's all kind of cartoonish, and it's like,
it is comic book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess just the other last thing I wanted to mention in terms of criticism was that I thought this was extremely well executed for what it was, but what it was is basically a 1930s style pulp science fiction story where all the aliens look human and FTL is everywhere, and the aliens all speak English apparently.
Right.
And I just like as I came out of this movie, I was just kind of like, wow, I really liked that, but I would really like to see that level of special effects and character and just a basic execution applied to something else, something more ambitious on a science fictional level.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that's the kind of thing that I hope to see in the Sci-Fi Channel is adapting the Expanse series by James Corey. Like, that's the kind of thing I'm hoping to see in there, like, where they put that sort of level of effort into the special effects and everything. I mean, obviously it's a television show, so they can't quite match that, but that series, does have a lot of, opportunity to do really cool things like that. So, hopefully we can get to see something like that soon. And also John Scalzi's Old Man's War series also was recently announced. Their Sci-Fi Channel's making that into a series. So that actually is probably more of a relevant comparison to Guardians of the Galaxy, because it's like a more serious version of that in a way, because it's like it has lots of aliens and stuff in it. And then of course we have Christopher Nolan's Interstellar coming up, which hopefully will do some of what you're looking for as well. It's hard to tell from the trailer so far, but it seems like there's a lot of time spent in the cornfield. A little bit too much for my liking, but after Inception, I'll go see anything that he does.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing with that trailer. I mean, it looks like a good movie, but the whole trailer, I don't know if the movie is going to be like this, but the whole trailer is basically about how much fathers love their kids,
right?
Which is cool. Like, that's fine, but I mean, I wish there was more science fiction that explored different kinds of societies with different kinds of values than the ones that we have, and that was another thing with Guardians of the Galaxy, is like it all just seems like heterosexual monogamous couples and everything. Like, there's. And the government looks just like our government. I mean, the army just looks like just like our army. I mean, just like that. One of the things about science fiction I like to see is that it can do completely different kinds of societies, and that shows up so seldom in film.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the sort of thing that you're going to get out of a movie like Guardians of the Galaxy. But yeah, no, it would be cool. It would be cool to see. And like if they were to adapt something like an Ian Banks novel or like Ursula Le Guin or something like that, like that would be cool. But hopefully the success of something like Guardians of the Galaxy will inspire filmmakers to be able to take other chances. Hopefully that it's not just in that sort of zany, sort of larger than life space opera type of thing, and maybe they can try to do something a little bit more serious, or like you say, that sort of take science fiction and to more of the extreme than more than what we've been seeing in film.
Yeah, I think if you're going to take advantage of something that Dave wants done, I mean, Dave, I'm looking for that too, but I just don't think feature films are the right canvas for that. I think TV probably would do better with that kind of approach, being able to really sort of flesh out a real alien culture on a space opera scope. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I just think what drives studios, of course, is making the big bucks, and I just think that they see that more as a niche type story approach.
Yeah, no, I agree. But if they ever did want to make a big budget movie that was a little bit more conceptually ambitious, I would be totally in favor of that. I mean, at the end of this movie, it says the Guardians of the Galaxy will return. Do you guys have any thoughts or desires for what's going to happen in the sequel?
No. No, I didn't put. I have to admit, I did not put much thought into that.
Do you think if they do a second one that the characters will interact with any of the other Marvel characters, or is it going to be another standalone adventure? Or?
Well, for what it's worth, like I don't know, like I said, I don't know the Guardians of the Galaxy comic, but I mean, I would actually love to see some of the other cosmic people from the Marvel Universe, because like I said, I mean, the Silver Surfer was like, I mean, well, I didn't actually say it. The Silver Surfer was my favorite comic, and all of that sort of related stuff was what I was most interested in, which is why I like the Infinity Gauntlet so much. But yeah, I mean, it'd be really cool to see the Silver Surfer. Unfortunately, I don't know if he's tied up rights-wise because of that Fantastic Four movie. So I don't know if he can be in a Marvel Universe movie, an MCU movie, I mean. So, that would be cool, but...
Is the upcoming Fantastic Four movie, that's separate from what's going on here, right? With the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff with Thanos? I mean...
Right, I think it's Fox or whatever.
It's Sony or Fox? Okay.
I mean, there was one thing in this movie where they go to a place called Nowhere. It's kind of like this pirate bay where it's inside the head of some sort of decapitated celestial or something. That was really cool. I would have liked to see. I don't know. That just opened up possibilities in my mind for cool stuff.
Yeah, that was really crazy. Like, I never would have expected that to actually stay in there, because like that's a thing. I knew that was a thing from the comics, and it was like, who would have guessed that they would actually keep that But I was really glad that they didn't like spend a tedious amount of time like explaining what the hell it is or anything. You know, they just, oh, okay, that's what it is. Let's go with it. You know,
Yeah.
it's like keep up or get left behind. But so actually, one thing that we haven't discussed that I'd like to at least throw out there is that I thought was cool was that this is actually the first the first MCU movie that was actually written by a woman. Although it's actually co-written because James Gunn like rewrote the screenplay apparently, but the first draft of this was actually written by a woman named Nicole Perlman, and apparently one of the reasons that it got made was that they hired her to adapt something just as being a sort of a talented screenwriter that they knew, and they gave her choice of like a bunch of different properties, sort of like the C-list type stuff that they didn't think was necessarily going to be like a big budget or a big movie, and so she picked Guardians of the Galaxy, and people were kind of surprised or whatever, but then she like knocked it out of the park with the screenplay, so. So I mean, I just thought that was really cool. And apparently James Gunn, like I said, he rewrote the script. I assume he added all the Michael Rooker parts. But also I do have to give him props though, because I guess Groot was not in the first draft of the screenplay, and Groot was amazing. Yeah. Although I could, in her defense, I could see why she may have left it out, because she'd be like, you know what, I want them to make this into a movie. If I put a giant sentient tree in there, it's probably not the best way to make it happen. It's bad enough I already got a talking raccoon, But I'm glad Groot ended up in there, however it happened.
All right, cool. So we're just about out of time here, so we should start wrapping this up. I guess I did want to ask Matt. We mentioned that your first novel is coming out in about a month. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. So the book is called The Eighth Continent. It's the story of brother and sister Rick and Evie Lane, who are trying to terraform the Great Pacific Garbage Patch into a verdant eighth continent, a new world where they can make their own rules. So they have to race around the world, gathering ingredients and tools that they need to create an Eden compound, which is a formula that their father, sort of a crazy inventor, developed that can transform trash into organic, sort of Earth-like compounds. It's a rip-roaring adventure story for kids. It sort of is set in an alternate present, is how I like to describe it. So it's set on Earth and everything kind of feels contemporary, but there are some far-flung technologies that sort of spice up living on Earth, like hover ships and talking robots and other kind of awesome stuff.
And so what age kids is this aimed at?
It's targeted towards like 8 to 13. I think 12 is probably the sweet spot for it. But, I think that everyone, I'm an adult. I wrote the book. And I wrote it, to deliberately, put in something that everyone will find entertaining. It is cool to kind of have this wild adventure story, but also a lot of really interesting technologies. Some of the stuff, like there's flying trees in the book, and those are technologies that may not exist in the near future, but a lot of the stuff is actually inspired by real tech that's being developed or is out right now. Advanced robotics and terraforming. And of course, the garbage patch itself is a big, serious issue that needs to be addressed. So I'm happy to use it as an excellent setting for raising awareness about pollution on Earth.
Isn't there another garbage patch in the Atlantic as well?
There's a number of them actually in most of the Earth's oceans. What happens is, as trash gets accumulated in ocean currents, they sort of get swept into these gyres that populate the Earth's oceans. There's several of them. So there's one in the Atlantic. There's a couple in the Pacific. If you go online, you can look up, sort of where a lot of them have been identified. It's hard to target exactly how many of the garbage patches there are and how big they are, because what happens is the trash is mostly plastic matter, and the agitation of the ocean current and the salt water break it down into these tiny little particles of plastic called nurdles, which accumulate. But because they're reflective, because they're so small, even with satellite imaging, it's hard to detect, where these things are located and how big they are. But we suspect that some of them may be twice the size of Texas, and they're all over the place.
So, Matt, do you have an evil character that has to acquire a powerful device?
Well,
funny you should ask.
I don't think that any of the villains in my book are smart enough to figure all that out.
Okay.
But I'm very fond of my villain. She loves all things that are plastic and pink, and is determined to transform the Garbage Patch into New Miami, a fun hotspot where people can go and spend lots of money. That's what matters to her. So she's not trying to take over the world. She's just trying to make it more the way she wants it to be.
All right, cool. So I think we're going to have to wrap things up there. But certainly we hope that you'll go check out Matt's book. His name is Matt London. The book is called The Eighth Continent. And of course, it's his first novel. We want it to do well because we want him to have the opportunity to write other books. So if you've enjoyed any of his 11 appearances here on Geek's Guide to the Galaxy, we hope you'll go check that out. And otherwise, I think we're going to wrap things up there. So Matt London and John Joseph Adams and Rob Bland, thanks so much for joining us as guest geeks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
And that was our panel. For more interviews and panels, visit us at geeksguideshow.com. Thanks.